Mike Bohn here in Las Vegas with Michael Chandler, fresh off your World MMA Awards, Knockout of the Year. We were out there last night at the awards. Just how'd it feel to get that recognition for your amazing KO of Tony Ferguson?
It was good, man. Hats off to Fighters Only. Years ago, the awards weren't that big, and they just keep growing and growing and growing and growing. And what Rob Hewitt has done at Fighters Only, and really now put it on a kind of a world stage. Where it was on ESPN Plus, I believe, and a couple different people around the world are seeing it. So it was cool, man. When you get in this sport, you want to have big fights, big opportunities, big stages, and big moments. And I've had a lot of them, and that KO was definitely going to go down as a shining bright moment in my career. So
as we get to the end of the year here, I'm sure it's not going to be the only award you win from the various media outlets and stuff like that. Yeah. Just going back to that one, I mean, like, such a crazy kick. That's not something you've done a ton in your career. Like, was that something that you saw in Tony that you'd be able to land, or was it just like a spur of the moment through it and it just landed so clean?
Yeah, honestly, it was somewhat spur of the moment because with the way Tony was moving, and he kind of moves in and out, side to side, his hands are a little bit wide, so there was a lane up the middle, and I would have seen myself faking a shot going more uppercut, but for some reason, he did have a little bit of length on me. Obviously, he's a little bit taller than me. His difference was hard to negotiate and navigate in there as well, and he moved a little bit differently than I kind of expected, so I was still kind of getting my feet underneath me in the distance. Leg is a lot longer than the hand, so going uppercut would have been probably too short, so I went up the middle with the kick and was just as surprised as anybody else in the arena or around the world. So it landed perfectly, and thank God it did, and here we are.
It was crazy. I was cage side for that one. Just seeing that kick land and seeing him go down, it was absolutely insane. One of the ones you'll never forget. But obviously a few weeks removed from the fight with Dustin and stuff. I know we spoke to you at the press conference the night of. You're pretty hard on yourself, but now that we're about a month or so removed, how do you feel about that fight?
Still hard on myself, man. I think I think this is what we all think. When we lose a fight, we all think we could have done better, and we could beat the guy that was standing across the cage from us. Very rarely do you say, man, there's no way I could get that guy's number. I think I definitely would have Dustin's number down the line, maybe with a little bit of a better game plan, a little bit. That's the beautiful thing about mixed martial arts. That's why you love it. That's why I love it. That's why the fans love it. Is sometimes the better guy wins. Sometimes the better guy loses. Sometimes fights that you didn't think were going to go a certain way end up going that way, or the exact opposite. It's such a crazy turn of events constantly happening in a chain of events, and that's why we love the sport. So I have no regrets. I left no stone unturned in my preparation. I trained extremely hard. I did things right. Dustin was the better man that night. Still some things that I would love to improve upon if I was to fight Dustin again. And I do want to run it back with Dustin, I think, eventually, because I want to get that win back. He said it's his house. I think I've quickly proven in the last 2 years that this is my house as well. So I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, and some more footage came out on the Thrill and Agony thing of the exchange in the cage. What's kind of the relationship with you and Dustin right now? Do you not like how the stuff he said after the fact, calling you dirty and a cheater and all this stuff?
No, man, he can have his own opinion, and I've said my piece about that. Listen, am I happy that those things happened? Absolutely not. But it's really unfortunate, or it's unfair for armchair quarterbacks to say, well, you should not have done this or should not have done that. When you're in there fighting for your life, you're in there just moving. Your body is moving. Synapses and muscle memories and things are happening inside there that you don't even quite have control of. You're focusing on the upper body down here and your lower body is doing something, and vice versa. So I've said my piece about it. I've apologized to anybody out there who thinks I may have done something intentionally, which I didn't. But ultimately, yeah, I think more at the end of the fight, it was more, hey, win, lose, or draw, I'm going to come up and shake your hand and congratulate you. And he wasn't exactly accepting of it, and wanted to say something, a little snarky. So I was like, okay, be a D-bag, I'm out, And then he, chased me down, and then we, kind of talked about it a little bit. But relationship is fine, man. He and I are trying to climb the same mountain, and it's just as simple as that.
And, in the aftermath of that fight, obviously you wish you could have got the win. And as you said, you think about things you could do different. But people that kind of talk about you, they're like, oh, is Michael making some of the right decisions in the cage and stuff like that? And I know you've said, you zig when you should have zagged, and that the whole thing changes, right? Do you think people are being fair to you when they maybe question like your fight IQ or some of the things that you do in there?
Sure. I mean, that's the thing about everything is left up to interpretation. I can't sit here. Number one, I'm not going to defend myself and say, I know how to fight better than anybody else who's saying that. Right. Let's put it that way. I've also been pretty darn successful at mixed martial arts. Am I undefeated? No. Do I have losses? Absolutely. Have I actually lost some fights that I probably should have won? Absolutely. But we all do. When you're fighting the best guys in the entire world, you're going to lose fights. I actually heard Luke Thomas break it down, and he did say maybe I would have won one of my 3 losses in the UFC had I fought a little bit smarter, but ultimately the way that I fight and what seemingly may look like a lower fight IQ or a quote-unquote brawler type of fight is actually the key to me finishing as many fights as I have, to beating as many guys as I have in my career, to breaking guys as much as I have in my career. Am I going to have the perfect technique at the perfect time to get the perfect finish or have the perfect outcome or get the perfect, get my hand raised with the judges? No, and I've never claimed to be that. Would I be champion right now if I fought a little bit differently? We don't know. Would I be undefeated right now if I fought differently? I don't know. Ultimately, I am who I am, and I'm out there just flowing, and I'm out there living it within my calling that God has put me on this earth to do, and I'm enjoying it thus far. And people are going to love you, people are going to dislike you, and there's going to be a lot of people in between, and you just got to keep doing you.
What do you make of Dana saying that you're kind of the Arturo Gatti of the UFC? Do you consider that a compliment? Is that like a backhanded compliment in a way? How did you feel about that?
No, because I think ultimately Arturo Gatti made people feel something. Arturo Gatti made people feel something. Was he the greatest fighter of all time? No, but we remember him. We talk about him. The people that were in the arenas and the people that watched him fight on TV, they remember him. With that being said, I still think I can become champion. I still think I'm one fight away from getting myself back into one fight away from the title. I got some work to do, obviously. That's why I've talked about, maybe taking a little detour, looking for that BMF belt, or we heard Dana say it yesterday. Could very well be the next fight for Conor. I think that's the biggest fight in the entire world to make. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, so let's get to that. Obviously, it comes out. We haven't seen the actual interview footage. I think it comes out next week, so I don't know his exact quote, but I think the one that came out is, "You're likely to be Conor's next fight." When you see that, does it feel more real now? Or I know there's still a lot of obstacles, this whole USADA thing, and just getting him in the cage is a whole different task. But does that make you, feel a certain thing to actually hear Dana say that?
Yeah, it does. Obviously Dana is the boss of the UFC. Obviously Conor has a tendency to also pick his opponents too, or have a good conversation with the UFC and say, hey, this is who I think, this is who you think, let's find a common ground, let's see where the fight actually lands. But there's one thing that's undeniable. Dana knows it, the UFC knows it, Conor knows it. I've become the most exciting guy in the UFC, bar none, hands down, and it's really is humbling. I don't say that to impress people or say that with a kind of a narcissistic attitude, but I do go out there and I lay it on the line. Where a lot of guys are out there playing point fighting and playing it safe, I go out there and lay it on the line and do exactly what I said I was going to do. When I came into the UFC, I said I want to fight the toughest guys right away. I want to fight and be a good thing for the organization, and I want to prove that I am who I say I am or I'm not. And I've done that in droves, hand over fist, constantly, nonstop, shown up, said yes when a lot of people said no. And it's being rewarded both by the fans as well as by the UFC. And I think a fight between me and Conor does staggering numbers. I still believe that. I think with the hype and the momentum that I have behind me, plus the hype and the momentum that Conor always has, but especially him coming back after a layoff, especially him after gaining some weight, gaining some muscle mass, us fighting at 170, him at his biggest, his baddest, his best, his most dangerous. It does staggering numbers. It's the fight to make 100%, unequivocally, No ifs, ands, or buts about it.
What do you think staggering numbers means? Like, what is that in your mind? Like, the UFC record for Khabib and Conor is 2.4 million. I don't know if they're ever touching that number again in the ESPN Plus era, just because it was like a different time. But you think it does over 1 million?
Yeah, no, that was definitely a different time, and there was definitely something special about that one too. Khabib with his Russian and Muslim following, Conor with his following, which is somewhat always large, obviously not somewhat, it's always large, yeah. Insane rivalry, the Dolly, all that kind of stuff. But over 1 million, yeah, we crush it. We blow past 1 million easily. You look at Conor's numbers, he's always doing over 1 million, no matter if he's fighting anybody. He'd be fighting a cold and he's going to do over $1 million. You fight me, I think the most exciting guy in the UFC right now, most momentum, must-watch TV, can't miss pay-per-view, butts and seats, hopefully here in Vegas, International Fight Week. I don't know when it's going to be. But just the build-up, the lead-out, the lead-up, and battlegrounds of epic proportions. You know, I want to win the title. I want to be the #1 guy in the world, but I also want the brightest lights, the biggest stages, the biggest opportunities, and the biggest opponents. And Conor McGregor is the biggest opponent that this sport may ever see, ever, you know? So we'll see if it happens. Obviously, Dana's on board with it. I think the UFC's on board with it. I do think Conor's on board with it. We've seen mine and his interactions in the past. You're not going to see me out here bad-mouthing him and mother-effing him and tweeting him and all that kind of stuff. That's not my style. I've always been respectful of Conor. I've always said the sport of mixed martial arts is better when Conor McGregor is in it. So let me be the other guy on the other side of the octagon.
So I guess the one thing, and again, we're not trying to trash the guy or anything, but there is this looming USADA thing that people seem to be feeling very strongly about right now. You read some of his tweets, you know, he seems to be hinting that maybe just doing some things to make sure his leg was fine, which people can have their opinions on whether that's fair or foul, but like, is there any concern to you that maybe there's some stuff going on during this time off, or will you feel comfortable if he goes through the 6 months, does his testing, is in the clear with USADA, that'll make you feel fine with any of that potential stuff going on?
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest, I fought outside the UFC most of my career. So I've never once been worried about whether or not a guy was using anything whatsoever. I will say it's just downright false that USADA. Are people going to scrutinize things and look at things through a microscope and comb through it with a fine-tooth comb and say, hey, USADA could do this better, USADA could do that better? Absolutely. But overall, I mean, we could be tested at any time, any place, anywhere. Our whereabouts are on our phones at all times. You know, is it a perfect system? No. Will it ever be perfect? Absolutely not. So do I have any concerns whatsoever? Absolutely not. And then also, the guy comes back and he's 6 months in the USADA testing pool, getting tested 6 times, 12 times, 5 times, 2 times, it doesn't matter. He's in the pool for that amount of time. 6 months is half a year. It's a long time. So I have no concerns. I'm not really that worried about it, honestly. I've wished Conor a speedy recovery since the very beginning. It's not like he sprained his ankle. Yeah. It's not like he broke his hand. It's not like he broke his nose. You know, it's the guy shattered his leg. So hope he's doing well on it. Hope he's recovering well. He looks big, tan, and jacked. So I'd love to fight him at 170. Let's do it.
Yeah, and you know, we talk about all this stuff, how sellable it could be, all these other things. I don't think people have really talked a ton about how the actual fight itself would go. When you see a guy coming off a serious injury like that coming back, like, is that leg to you like a big target that you test early on? Like, he's been out of action for a long time. Like, what do you think going into a fight with him? You don't want to give away the whole game plan, but like, what do you kind of see as some of the advantages from a style versus style perspective?
Yeah, no, I've always focused 90% on myself, 10% on my opponent, and I've always focused 90% on how I can be put in the best situation to win. And me gunning after an old injury is a fool's errand to me. And number 2, it's going to be his back leg on a southpaw. It's his left leg. It's his, you know, so me gunning for that leg is not going to be very easy because it's going to be way back in the back. So I'm going to put myself in a more disadvantaged position trying to exploit a not small injury, but a older injury with a smaller likelihood of me actually having more success than if I just stay in my normal course of action, which is throw hands, mix it up, use my athleticism, use my speed, strength, quickness, explosiveness, power, be explosive as heck in that first round. People have said they think it's going to be the fastest paced, craziest first round of all time, and I think it definitely will be. The way that Conor McGregor starts fights, the way I start fights, it's a car crash in the middle of an octagon, hopefully in the middle of T-Mobile Arena here in Vegas in July. So it's going to be huge. It's going to be awesome, and I believe it's going to happen. Things are moving in the right direction, so let's make it happen.
Awesome. And you mentioned, this fight could very well take you to a title shot. I mean, everyone who's beat Conor, look where it takes them. We got Dustin the shot. I'm sure anyone else who's beat him in a scenario would go on to great things for you. When you see the title fight in February with Islam and Volkanovski, what are you thinking of that one? Do you think Volkanovski is going to kind of be able to become a double champ here? Do you think that's in the best interest of the division because he wants to defend both? Or do you think Islam gets it done again?
Well, number one, I'm not even ever going to be talking about a title shot right now. I got to get some wins. I will admit.
I talked about it, not you.
Yeah. It's like, oh, here he goes again, talking about title shot. And I was stretching the last time I did after just coming off of one win, but now at this point, yeah, it's like I got a couple fights, but man, I'm very interested in seeing how that fight does, man. I'm a huge Volkanovski fan. He's very, very good. Is he going to be smaller than Islam? Yes, very much so. But I don't think. I've said before, I think I've somewhat changed my prediction a little bit. I do think Volkanovski is going to do better than we all think he does. He used to weigh 210 pounds, 220 pounds, whatever he was when he was playing rugby. Your body remembers that. You carry that strength with you. You carry that power with you. You carry just the hip strength of Islam not being able to take him down. The one thing I see is that Volkanovski is a little bit shorter, so that leverage game of if Islam gets up underneath him, puts his head underneath his chin, he's going to be able to lift him off the mat pretty easy, off the ground pretty easy. But in the striking department, Volkanovski's better than him. And I think in the speed, the power department, Volkanovski's better than him. So anything outside of Islam going out there, taking him down in the first minute of each round and holding him down, I think Volkanovski might actually squeak out a decision. Most likely not a finish, but a decision. And going back to your other question, no, it's not a good thing for the divisions. It never is, man. It's awesome. It's really cool to see a guy like Volk, who has earned it, clear out his division, go up a weight class, and get the opportunity at double champ status. He absolutely deserves it. If anybody in the entire world deserves it, it's him. However, now you got to defend the 145 title and the 155 title. He's going to be either be extremely busy or one of those divisions is getting held up.
It's never really worked out. I mean, like all the double champ stuff, look at Henry Cejudo, he retired and left like 2 divisions hanging. The only time it's really worked with Amanda Nunes, and one of her divisions isn't really a division. So
Exactly, yeah, that's true, right? It was a division. And then they are doing a Josh Emmett, Yair Rodriguez interim. So that's also the interesting thing too. And I would never question how the UFC does business, but I'm also wondering, if you're going to give a guy an opportunity to go for a double champ, why then are we also doing an interim title
on the same card too? It's very
same, So, but then again, I'm not a fight promoter. Luckily, let's be honest. Do you really want Dana White's job? Do you really want Hunter Campbell's job? Do you really want their job? It's like herding cats nonstop, putting out fires, and then trying to figure out selling the biggest fights in the world. It's absolutely nuts. So like I said, I'm not questioning their decision to do that, but it is kind of interesting. You got a guy doing a double champ thing, so why do you do the interim title? But either way, I shouldn't be talking about titles. All right, I've had my opportunities. I need to go out there and win a freaking fight Conor in July, and then beat somebody else up. Maybe run it back with Poirier. Maybe run it back with Justin Gaethje. Maybe run it back with Charles Oliveira. Get one of those losses back. But first things first, me and Conor this summer.
Yeah. And you mentioned it'd probably be at 170. I know you fought 170 in Bellator before. Do you bulk up for that and to change your approach, or do you feel like you maybe just don't really cut as much weight for a fight like that?
Yeah, no. I mean, luckily I'm 190 right now. So it's not like I'm going to be. I'm 190, so I will just go into really heavy training like I would in a normal training camp, eat normal, and I'll be 175, 180, I don't need extra size on me. I feel my best at 175, 180, Right now, obviously, nursing a little bit of a lower body injury, not really injuries, but just, banged up from the fight. Me and Dustin went at it. So haven't really been able to do much cardio and working out these last couple weeks. So I have put on a little bit of weight. So I'm in a good spot size-wise. I just wouldn't cut the water weight at the very end. It would be amazing to fight 170. So let's go ahead and do that.
And last thing on that, I know you have an amazing team with Randall and Dave Martin, and they're going to be the ones kind of handling the negotiation side. But there's all the talk, red panty night. What happens when you fight Conor McGregor? Do you got a cut of the pay-per-view? Do you got this, that? Is that an expectation from you that if this fight does materialize, it should be and will be a grander payday for you?
I think that's always implied that it's going to happen. And obviously, yeah, like we said, to be clear, I do want to make a living for my family, obviously, but it's not just because of the red panty night. It is because of I want battlegrounds of epic proportions against big opponents and big names. But yeah, ultimately, I think, sure I'll make a little bit more money fighting Conor, but ultimately it's about the big payoff of having the huge platform more than it is the big payday, and I truly believe that. But yeah, I'm sure I'll make a little bit more money. We'll see.
And last thing, when push comes to shove, you guys are in there. How do you feel like you can beat him? Do you feel that's the one that's like 5-rounder, which I assume it would be because it would probably be a pay-per-view main event that kind of goes like tooth and nail, or do you feel this is a fight that you can end like spectacularly, maybe in the first couple rounds?
Man, I think Conor is dangerous. And he's durable. He really is. When he has been finished, it's been by submission. But he's also not easy to get down. Khabib had a hard time getting him down. Diaz couldn't really get him down until he got him really tired later on in the fight. You know me, I'm going to go out there and try to put hands on him pretty quick. It's going to be I think it's going to be a very fast-paced first round. A lot of striking. I want to make him make a backward step before I do. He's got his fade away, throw to the left. He's got his spins. He's got a lot of really interesting tools that are different than a lot of guys you train with. So my prediction would be I'm going to go out there and we're going to fight tooth and nail on the feet.
Well, appreciate it. It seems like this is materializing, so I hope you get done. I think this is the correct fight to make. I've said it for a while now, so I hope you get yours, man. You deserve it.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.